Hi, I'm Kristen Radin, and I'll be showing you 6 tricks for using photo composition to create beautiful iPhone photos. Even if you're new to photography, you've probably heard of photo composition. It's essentially crafting your photo so that the viewer sees what you want them to see and how you want them to see it. We're going to look at 6 different aspects of photo composition and how to use them to enhance your photos. The first trick is to get closer to simplify your shot. Getting closer ensures the viewer will know where to look, and it will automatically eliminate background distractions. For instance, the wagon is the subject of this photo, but when I took this first shot, there was too much of the background taking attention away from the wagon. After walking a few feet closer, I had a better shot featuring my subject. Here's another example. In this photo, there are many elements: a house, table and benches, a yard full of leaves, and trees surrounding the house. But which one is the subject? And where should the viewer look? Well, when I got closer and walked toward the house, I noticed these wonderful bits of nature on the table. It's something I didn't see from my original vantage point. This gave me a specific focal point to shoot and simplified the scene. The house still adds context in the background, but the viewer now knows exactly where to look. Another tip is to fill 2/3 of the frame with your subject. This is just one way to use the photo composition technique known as the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds relates to where you place the subject or focal point in the frame. This principle tells us that instead of always placing your subject in the center of the frame, you can create a more natural balance by placing it off-center. Imagine dividing your photo frame into 3 sections horizontally and vertically so that you have 9 areas and 4 intersecting points. Now think about your photo frame in a 1:2 ratio rather than equal halves or one whole. If we fill 2/3 of the frame with the subject, the viewer's eye will naturally be drawn to this area because it fills up the larger part of the frame. Make sure there is some contrast between this area and the rest of the photo. Since our brains are wired to recognize difference and contrast, this is a key point, and it helps the viewer to understand where the subject ends and the background begins. For instance, the subject fills up 2/3 of this photo, so your eye is naturally drawn there, even though this area is in darkness. But you'll notice there is a contrast between the dark area and the light of the window behind the plant. The light area takes up just 1/3 of the photo, and it's the contrast between these two areas that creates a natural sense of balance. In this next photo, the plant takes up 2/3 of the photo. When your subject is a static or passive object like a plant, an off-center placement will make the photo more intriguing. Keep in mind that you don't need to be super precise with this. For example, we can see in this photo the woman and child together fill up roughly 2/3 of the frame. Just think about keeping your subject off-center and filling up most, but not all, of the frame. Another trick is using negative space to emphasize your subject. In its simplest form, negative space is the space around the subject. But for this presentation, I'm giving it an even narrower definition. Negative space is the area that is largely devoid of any subject matter. It appears empty. It may be a blank wall or floor, or it could even be an expanse of sky. The area doesn't have to be solid, but there shouldn't be anything distinctive in this area that takes attention away from the subject. For instance, in this photo, I really wanted to accentuate the complexity of all the different wires coming from this telephone pole. The negative space helps the viewer to see the shapes and proportions more realistically. If there were other competing objects in the scene, the complexity of the telephone pole would be lost. Negative space also helps to make objects appear smaller, more delicate, or fragile. In this photo, I used negative space around these two branches to emphasize the delicacy of the branches and leaves. One way to get your viewer to see exactly what you want them to see is to use leading lines to lead the eye to your subject. Leading lines typically refer to a line or path that draws the eye into and through the photograph. Leading lines take many forms: a road or path, a shoreline, a row of flowers, telephone wires, or the architecture of a building. Leading lines are great for directing attention to your subject or focal point. In this photo, the walking path leads the eye to my subject walking in the distance. But you don't have to think in terms of single straight paths all the time. Do you notice the leading lines in this photo of a flower? We can see lines emerging from the center of the flower, radiating out to direct attention to its petals. Start thinking of unique ways that lines can be viewed and used to direct attention in your photos. Let's take a look at this photo of a sink. Can you see leading lines here? This is a much more subtle example, but it shows how lines are everywhere and how they can be used in many different ways to direct attention. If we look at the yellow lines I've added to this photo, we can now see a bullseye is simulated using the lines around the sink. These lines help to pull our attention into the sink to the plate and knife. The faucet creates yet another leading line that directs our attention to the plate and knife as well. It's also important to know that photo elements like color can be used to enhance your photo composition by creating mood. Colors are great at conveying mood or an emotional tone that helps the viewer experience the atmosphere of the place and time that the photo was taken. While bright, bold colors convey action and excitement, subdued, earthy colors project a relaxing mood that works especially well for nature and landscape photography. Let's examine the colors in this photo and how they contribute to the overall mood. One color that is usually very soothing is green. And in this photo, you'll notice at least 3 green objects: the leaves of the tree behind the porch, the chair cushions, and the column behind the chair. All of these green colors help to convey a sense of calm and peacefulness. But when you use very earthy and calming colors, particularly in the same color palette, your photo can become a little monotonous and boring. So it's helpful to use a brighter color for balance. In this case, the pink flowers add a pop of color that create a spark of interest that balances the entire photo. A lack of color also conveys mood. The stark contrast of black and white photography often gives a sense of timeless mystery. Now, the final trick I'll share is shooting from a unique angle. Our natural instinct is to take photos from a standing position and at eye level because this is how we see the world. But think about how to capture your subject in a new way simply by positioning yourself or your iPhone in a different place. For example, to get this shot, I simply set the iPhone right on this dock and snap the photo. The beauty of the iPhone is that it's small and lightweight, and you can place it on the ground or set it on top of something to get a truly unique shot. I took this photo while I stood under a billboard. We all recognize the front of a billboard, but this image presents an unexpected viewpoint. Instead of shooting head-on, challenge yourself to photograph from an unusual vantage point. Take photos from above or below your subject. You may have to sit or lay on the ground to get the best shot. Sometimes you'll need to move closer or farther away. Remember to look underneath or inside of things. This photo began as a discovery of what was left inside a barrel. If it's possible, walk around your subject to find the angle with the most compelling perspective. It may be the side or rear view that is the most intriguing. I was taking a walk when I spotted this large crack in a wall. so I got closer to get a better angle. In this photo, you can see I had to get pretty close to find the right angle. And I knew this was the right angle because in this position, I noticed other points of interest, like the trees on the other side of the wall and the sunlight streaming through the top of the crack. Another idea is to shoot from your subject's point of view, perhaps standing next to them or shooting over their shoulders to capture what they see. This photo of a girl waiting for a ride was literally shot from the hip. Although you can't see the girl's face, the angle of the photo conveys her viewpoint and body language. So now we've seen some different ways to create beautiful iPhone photos. Try using these 6 photo composition tricks to take your photos to the next level.